Good morning. The April 21st Senate Finance Committee will come to order. We have 3 bills on the agenda today. Going to try and get as many of them done before 10:30, and we will meet in the afternoon to finish the ones we do not finish. And we're going to start with Senate File 203, Senator Port. Senator Hoffman's bill will be coming up next, and then we'll deal with Senator Hurd's bill after that. And so with that, Senator Port, what I'll suggest is you walk through the bill, and then you have the staff go through anything else, and there's some amendments in the packets, I believe, as well, and so on. And Senate Counsel, do you want to explain the process for how we're going to handle this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It's my understanding that your intended process for this bill is, as you described, to take up the bill, have Senator Port do her opening comments, have staff do the walkthrough, including the spreadsheet, and then take up amendments, discussion, questions, etc., and then there'll be a motion on the bill to send the bill to the floor.
Okay. With that, Senator Port, welcome to the Senate Finance Committee, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. As we know, the cost of housing is rising more than ever in Minnesota, and the dream of homeownership is slipping out of reach for more and more families. Federal housing cuts, tariffs on essential building materials, and the destabilization posed by ICE are making it harder for Minnesotans in every community to afford their homes. This bill creates meaningful change that will help Minnesotans afford a safe and stable place to live, including by preventing wealthy private equity investors from driving up the costs of housing by creating essential protections for residents of manufactured home parks and by building new affordable housing across the state. To give you a summary of the bill, this includes a $50 million issuance of housing infrastructure bonds. It includes MHFA's administrative updates, including technical changes from their administrative bill, including language clarifying income earned by lived experience consultants with the agency is exempt for the purposes of determining eligibility for other public assistance programs, as well as language exempting workforce housing programs from the income limit requirements of the state housing tax credit. It also has MHFA investment reforms, which I've worked on with Senator Draheim and appreciate his partnership in that. It has a broadening of Greater Minnesota infrastructure grant programs, allowing workforce housing to be included in that program. It includes the Manufactured Housing Bill of Rights and the private equity restrictions bill that Senator Bolden carried that prohibits private equity companies which own more than 100 single-family homes from acquiring single-family homes between 1 and 4 units beginning on August 1st, 2026. That is the totality of my bill, Mr. Chair. If you want, Mr. Olofsson can certainly walk you through the one line on our spreadsheet.
Mr. Olofsson, go ahead. I'm sure it'll take a long time.
Oh, so long, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members, for the record, Eric Olofsson, fiscal analyst for the Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committee. In your packets, you should have a 2026 housing finance spreadsheet 8. Sorry for the typo, as passed housing committee SF 203, first engrossment in the top left corner. Just to orient you to the spreadsheet, the column A is all the various appropriations. Column B is the fund where the appropriations originally come from. Column C is the last biennium. Columns D and E are the governor's recs, but what we'll focus on is columns F through M. The first 2 pages are basically the base budget. Moving on to page 3 of the spreadsheet, looking at line 66 for the debt service obligations for 50 million HIBS authorization. This was also a governor's recommendation, but it would be 1 million of debt service beginning in fiscal year 29. But I would note it would increase to 2.8 million in FY23 and then 4 million per year ongoing beginning in FY 2031. There's also a HIBS debt service spreadsheet in your packets, if you'd like me to walk through that at all, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So also in your packets, there's a Spreadsheet, top left corner, SF 203, first engrossment debt service tracking. So this tracks nonprofit housing bonds and housing infrastructure bonds, debt service payments based on the February 2026 forecast. So the leftmost column is the bonds authorized from 2008 through 2025. The second column is the amount. So the total amount from 2008 through 2025 is 651 million of HIBs and nonprofit housing bonds have been authorized. The next, and then moving forward, that's the general fund debt service for these authorizations. The third column is FY 2011 through 2021, so 11 total fiscal years. So 76.2 million has been authorized through, has been paid for debt service from the general fund for housing infrastructure bonds through 2021, and then each year is an individual year after that. So in the current biennium in FY 26, we're paying 38.3 million approximately of debt service for housing infrastructure bonds, and then next fiscal year in FY 27, it's estimated to be 42 million. So line 14 shows the 50 million authorization of 1 million in FY 29, 2.8 million in FY 2030, and then 4 million ongoing beginning in FY 2031. So for a total debt service estimated for this 50 million authorization would be approximately 75.8 million. So that's concludes my walkthrough of the spreadsheet. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions on either the HIB or the other spreadsheet? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, both of you. I just like to point out the cost of the HIBs. I know it's putting things on a credit card, and I'm just getting concerned. That dollar's getting, 2030, it'll be 46 million. That's getting up there, and to me, we should try to do more cash than bonding when we're looking at projects. But I just want to warn people that you look at the trend line. 2022, that's just 4 years ago, and we were under 20, and now we're at 40 more or less. So we can't continue at this pace. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Draheim. Senator Howe.
Thank you. And going down that line, it would be different. I would be more supportive if we've seen a lot of success. We haven't seen any metrics to show us how this has done a great deal. We continue to go, in my opinion, in the wrong way. It hasn't shown us that we've been successful in fighting the homelessness fight with this program as much as I think we could. So I think that's my concern, as we continue to funnel money into it, and I haven't seen us turn the line in a different direction. And that's my concern as we continue to pour money into the program.
Senator Port or anyone, any comments on this? Or Senator Draheim, you have what? Amendments. Okay. Any more comments on this before we get to amendments? Or?
No, I do have a technical amendment when
Okay.
we're at that point.
Senator Friend, not yet. Okay. So we have two amendments. Senator Port, you have an 821 amendment in the packets, and then we'll take Senator Draheim has a 820 amendment, I guess. So we'll start with 821. Senator Friends can move the 821 to put before Senator Port on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a technical amendment, lines 1.2 to 1.5, modify the Manufactured Housing Bill of Rights to correct errors in the committee report from Judiciary when it came to our committee. Lines 1.6 to 1.7 make the title of the section consistent with the changes being made for MHFA board meetings. Line 1.8 is the changes DHS requested to make the lived experience exemption conform to federal law. And lines 1.10 to 1.16 adds a corrected reference for capacity building grants.
Any discussion on the 821 technical amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Draheim, the 820 amendment.
Thank
in the
you.
packets.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Port, for working with me on this a little bit. We've had some frustration in the Housing Committee on the speediness of getting programs out. We've had a great opportunity to expand some housing programs, but we heard from nonprofits about the frustration of getting the programs implemented and the money out the door. And, you know, I commend the agency on their aggressiveness of using resources to have interest to operate. So they do year after year, let's just say $1 billion a year in mortgages. They get a profit off of that. Part of that profit goes to operate the agency. And I commend that in one way. But when we authorize certain programs, I expect that to be done at a normal rate, get the money out as soon as you can, et cetera. And during this same time period, we heard, after record funding to the agency, that they had a liquidity problem. And the reason they had these programs out the door was they were using the money to make interest to quote unquote operate. And if we have a program that we've authorized, I think the funding should go to that program. So that's what this does. Senator Port, I don't know if you want to add anything to my thoughts there.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Draheim. I do really appreciate your partnership on this. I think there is work that we as the legislature, and this is a good first step, can do to have a little bit more control over which funds the money goes into and how quickly those programs come up, and then how quickly that money is reinvested back into those programs. We want our agencies to earn interest on the money. Some of the housing programs take many years to get out because building housing takes time. And so sometimes the programs are meant to extend over multiple years. But we do want that money, as the law says, reinvested back in those programs after it is used for the operations of the agency. And I think this amendment gives us, as the legislature, a little bit more control and a little bit more line of sight into what is happening. And I think this is something, I think I first heard Senator Draheim talk about Pool 3 and how the agency was funded in my very first weeks as a senator, and it's something we've both had our eye on for multiple years, and I think that this is a good step to make sure that the legislature has just a little bit more line of sight and is able to control where that money goes.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the 820 amendment? If not, all those in favor say, oops. Senator Murphy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Mr. Chair, just briefly, I want to thank Senator Draheim for his work on this, and Senator Port for the work that you and the committee have done on this topic. As you know, I thought we should take a different approach because of my frustration with what feels like squirreling away of funding beyond what is needed for operations at MFHA, while we know people are struggling with housing. And I think that it is important that we are looking to reform that and improve it. And I appreciate the work that the committee is doing, that you are doing, Chair Port, and thank you, Senator Draheim, for the amendment. It's important.
I think this does help us with legislative holding agencies accountable, and I appreciate the amendment. On the A20 Draham amendment, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Further, Senator Friends. Nothing, okay. Further discussion, Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. I have another amendment, the A22.
Senator Draheim offers the A22 amendment, which is not in the packet, so we will get that distributed.
And if I could.
Why don't you start explaining it while it's being distributed?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of discussion about mobile home parks, and it's been wonderful. You know, when we look at the whole ecosystem of housing, I think manufactured home parks are a key part of that ecosystem. And there's some bad actors out there. I think we need to address those bad actors, but I don't think we're quite there right now. So what my amendment does, it deletes that portion of the bill that I know has been worked on very hard, and we've had a lot of great discussion on it. But this is a finance bill. This is strictly policy. So I am removing that section from the bill. And we can go into more, but that's the underlying gist of the A22 amendment.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I strongly ask for a no vote on this. This is both our policy and finance bill. This is everything we've got in the housing bill this year. And I will also say, you know, in the 4 years that I've been chair of this committee, the hardest days in our committee have been when we have had folks from manufactured home communities come in and tell us their stories. We've done this every year for 4 years. We've been working on this bill through that entire time. It is devastating what is happening in those communities because they own their homes, but not the land underneath. They really are held hostage by the owners of the parks. And as we are starting to see more and more parks flip to become owned by out-of-state private equity or large investors, they don't have a stake in what happens in those communities here in Minnesota. Senator Bolden has carried this bill for 4 years and has gone through the Housing Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Commerce Committee multiple times. This bill is well thought out. It has significant changes that will help the folks in those communities have a fair shot. We are hearing stories about, you know, rent being raised huge percentages for the dirt underneath their homes. And people are losing their homes because of it. And when they do, they're just evicted. And they lose that equity in their homes. Oftentimes, the owner ends up being able to sell their homes because it is prohibitively expensive to move them. This is a thing that we cannot wait on longer. There are manufactured home communities in districts all across the state. And this is a problem that is spread far and wide, and it is timely act. This is, the work that Senator Bolden has done is thoughtful and will make a difference in people's lives. And I encourage folks to vote no on this amendment.
Is there, Senator Friends?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Port, for the overall bill and especially for your work on manufactured home parks. This issue, Senator Draheim has been in and out of my office for the entire session. I know how passionately you want to help people find their way to housing. I'm a no on your amendment, but I want to be clear. We have a clear dichotomy in this state between these private equity bad actors. I'm with you, Senator Draheim, to try to go against those bad actors. And I share your concern about the good actors. If we want more housing, we have to encourage those owners that are playing by the rules and that are trying to provide a housing environment that people can afford and not to abuse. I realize the spirit of the A22, Senator Draheim, and you have my pledge to continue working on it. But I also think we have to have the chief author prerogatives play in here too. They put in a ton of work here. The conversation will continue, and I'll be a no out of respect for Senator Port and Senator Bolden and the people who are here watching us in the Finance Committee today saying we want to see some protection for where we live. And the abuses, if you like the term private equity, I'm fine with that. They're real. Let's go after them. But we cannot create an environment where good actors are penalized. And with that, I'll be a no on the A22. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Port.
Is there further discussion on the Senator Pratt, then Senator, okay, I have a whole row of you going down. That's okay.
I can hold.
No, go ahead, Senator Pratt first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you know, we're all very sympathetic to what's happening. I think every one of us has a mobile home park or several in our district, and we need to be able to help those folks stay in their homes. I agree with you on that, Senator Port. Where I'm concerned is the fact that this becomes a de facto rent control that ends up, as we've seen in St. Paul and other places, actually reduce the supply and increase the cost before the new provisions kick in. And I think it's going to, you know, it seems like every time we step in and try to help, and Senator Howe touched on this a little bit, we end up making the problem worse. As we pour money into some of these programs, they become more and more expensive. And I'm afraid that this is going to have some dire unintended consequences on the very people that we're trying to help. So I support the A22.
Senator Murphy, then Senator Draheim, and Senator Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank you, Senator Port, and Senator Bolden for the work on this, but more importantly for the coalition of Minnesotans who have brought this issue into sharp relief. And we have a long history in this country of taking from people when the land is valuable. And that's what is happening here, and I can't imagine that we would tolerate it any longer. And when you spend time with people in their homes, which I have, and hear their stories, and I really admire the work that group has done to bring this issue here. There's just no right choice but to act on their behalf to make sure that the people and the investments that they have made in a place to live, a safe place to call home, has got to be the policy of the state. This is really important. Thank you.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. And, you know, thank you, Senator Port, for including this in the bill. I do think it's worthy of the discussion. Senator Bolden's worked very hard on this, and I appreciate her work on it. You know, my two main issues are the first with the rent control, 3%. You know, I think our counties put out a statement earlier this year that they're projecting a 14% increase across the board, depending if we don't act up here, 14%. You look at what we've done with paid family medical leave, earned sick and safe time. So if these parks have people hired, the cost of labor has gone up. Cost of medical insurance if they're insured. So, you know, a 3% rent control isn't enough to cover expenses. And if you remember, one of the things we worked really hard on in your committee is the infrastructure grants to these parks. And I think we're just gonna head backwards without giving the housing providers the resources to reinvest into the parks. You know, 3% is pretty skinny to operate any business. We also have the cost of funds. So you look, so when you finance something, you know, usually you put 20% down, you go to the local bank and you borrow money for 3, 5, 7 years, and then you come back to renegotiate the rate. And you look at the rate difference in the last few years, that 3% would cover it. So that is one of my issues. And then the other issue is the opportunity to purchase. So one of the discussions we had in committee for the members that aren't in the housing committee was a park that sold for what was it, 32 million, something like that. That's a lot of money. And, you know, I know we all come from diverse backgrounds, but to come up with 20% of 32 million, that's $6.4 million. That's a lot of money. And to slow up a purchase, you know, if to me, land trusts would be a great place for these parks. I think that would be amazing to come up with a program for that next year, for those of you who are coming back. But to handcuff the current owners, you know, if, like we discussed in committee, if I was a resident and I really wanted to put together a group to purchase the park, I would go talk to the current owners. I would offer that opportunity to purchase. I would purchase that opportunity to purchase and record it on the deed, which you can do. So I think this is just a little too much, too big a government. I commend what we're trying to accomplish. If we're worried about just the venture capitalists coming in, then let's do something on that like you're doing with the housing portion and try to attack it that way, not restrict the rights of the people that own the park, which I think you're doing. So I hope everybody will support the 822.
Senator Mohammed, then Senator Porcher.
Thank you, Chair Marty, and thank you, Senator Chair Bolden, for bringing the bill forward. You said something in the beginning when you talked about the amendment, which is when we sit in the Housing Committee over the last 4 years, some of the hardest days are when we're talking about this issue. Because we hear from hundreds of Minnesotans who are on the margins of our systems, the senior folks who are seniors, the elderly, folks who are disabled. And when I think about what we've been able to experience over the course of those last 4 years as Senator Bolden has worked on this bill, I think a lot about the lack of urgency when it comes to this issue. You have Minnesotans who are struggling because of the neglect and abuse by corporate owners, who most of them are not even from the state of Minnesota. In St. Cloud, there was a high-profile case where there was a backup sewage issue. And I think, yes, there are good actors and bad actors, but when we think about who the actors at play for this issue, 90% of in 2024 alone, 90% of these were out-of-state investors. These folks are not even from our state. They are leaving these people out to dry on their own. And when I hear from people from our communities, I hear people who are just frustrated at the lack of urgency, who have been telling me, and people like yourself, for 4 years you've been working on this. And I just thank you for bringing it forward. I know Senator Draham has been an enormous voice in the Housing Committee, and I always trust his perspective. I do think this is an issue I think we just disagree on. But I just thank Senator Bolden for working on this for the last 4 years. I think this is a good compromised point, and if she wanted to move it forward, she could have done it the first year and not heard people.
Senator Johnson, then Senator Porter.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, in that second section that's been repealed, or your amendment right now, if that doesn't go through, there's a 3% cap then on annual increases. Is that right? On
Senator
that?
Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that question, Senator Johnson. No. There is a requirement that rent increases be reasonable, and that if it is above 3%, that the park owner needs to describe why that is necessary. Now, that can be, as Senator Draham was saying, needed investments into the park. That is a reason that you would be allowed to raise increases more. Also, increases in operational or capital costs, which would be property tax increases, the cost of labor going up. Those are all allowable reasons to raise the rent more than that. Special levied or pending taxes on the manufactured home, there's a list of reasons why they can raise it more than that. They just have to show that there is a reason to raise it more than that. We saw some parks that raised more than double, like more than 10, 15, 18% in a single year, which most of the folks living in these parks are on fixed incomes. And in some of the cases where we saw private equity come in and buy the parks, they bought them for well over double what the market rate was. Because they are literally selling classes, we can send you the website, on how to strip money out of manufactured home parks. Buy it for excess, jack up the rents. These people are stuck there. They're literally giving classes on how to do this on the internet, and we're seeing that happening here in Minnesota now. And so it is a critical moment that we act, and this just says, if you're gonna raise the rents, you have to show us why.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that explanation. I think if you were to take out private equity and you replace the Minnesota state government in that description that you just gave, I think that's what you're feeling with a lot of Minnesota families right now, where government has come in and raised the cost for homeowners across the state, whether you're in a trailer park or if you are in town somewhere in Badger, Minnesota, or over in Wayzata or anywhere in between. This same thing is happening where we see the increases to homeowners and their costs going through the roof. And we see that through the property taxes as well, too. We've, as Republicans here in the Senate, have proposed a bill to do something similar where you have to go out and describe why that's happening. And our counties are coming back and saying, well, you know, for us, it has been a number of things. We've got increased energy prices due to the mandates that are being imposed, and now we have to try to figure out how to meet those mandates in the state. That increases the cost to our counties. The mandates on labor and finding people to work for the counties, that has increased incredibly the cost to our counties as well. That gets passed on to the homeowners. If you want to talk about some of the other things too, simply conforming with some of the tax policies that would help out so many people in trailer parks and outside of those. The tips and overtime fee, the conformity to our federal counterparts on that. You talk about tab fees, the increase just on tab fees over the last few years for that. I mean, what we are doing to the citizens is exactly what you are describing these private equity and other companies coming into these parks doing. I just want you and others to realize that we have an effect on these individuals, not just in trailer parks, but across the state, on Minnesota citizens, and they're feeling the exact same way. And so to pick out a certain group, a small group like this that live within our districts and across the state, I think we've got to look more broadly and say Minnesotans in general are suffering under the same policies that you're implicating on Minnesotans day in and day out. So I wanted to point that a little bit out, but I think Senator Drahein's amendment is something that really starts to address some of the issues that we have with this bill.
Senator Johnson, on that comment, I think when you talk about some of the, as you describe them, costs added by government, paid family and medical leave is to pay for a benefit that saves a lot of families from desperate costs, things they can't afford, and allows them to do things that matter to their lives. These private equity firms are taking the money out of these manufactured home parks and bringing it to investors in other states with no return. I think there are many times it depends what one is doing with the money in a case like this. I mean, these investors are simply pulling it out of those communities, and they're not using it for anything to help those communities. They're using it for higher profits for their investors. Senator Johnson.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. But I also like to point out as well too, the taxes that we're raising are going out of the state in many ways, $9 billion, $18 billion, that do not benefit our citizens as well too. So to point to private equity and say, hey, look, they're doing something bad, we have to look in the mirror and say, look, we have not been effective with state taxpayer dollars as well. We've got a huge issue in this state. Now we're going back out to Minnesotans and asking for more again. I think we just have to be careful who we're pointing fingers at.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, I've got a lot of experience with manufactured home parks because I end up going out and inspecting a lot of them. And in a bad experience, we had one that they closed down, right? They decided to move. They came in, bought the park. We had to move some that were able to be moved. And we built 2 hotels and a restaurant on that property. But what I'm getting at is there was a lot of those that they sell these manufactured homes to someone else. And there's a player that we haven't talked about here, and I don't know if you had that discussion in committee, but where's the Department of Labor and Industry? Because many of those homes were not even legally transferred because they didn't have the seal on them. And it puts the local officials in a bad spot because then we get a call and say, hey, they want to do something to improve the manufactured home. And that, as soon as you touch that, that seal's coming off. And it makes it it is really a difficult piece and and that's what I'm concerned about. Where's the state agency in this in making sure those are proper and that they're able to be transferred? And that's how these people get in. They think they're finally going to own something that's worth something, and it's worthless. It's already past its usable life, and when it comes time when they actually close that manufactured home park, it's incapable of being moved to a new park. We had to go in, we had to inspect as a building official, trying to figure out what was able to be roadworthy and what wasn't going to fall apart on the road going to the new park, and those folks were just out. So where is that piece of this that doesn't get addressed anywhere that I could find? And I think there's a lot more work to do on this, but and I'm not a fan of the folks that own them because I'm in conflict with those folks all the time, but I don't think this gets to that. I think it's going to prevent, it's actually going to have more of these sharks, if you want to call them, that come in and gobble this up for redevelopment, rather than getting good manufactured home park folks to come in and buy it and do the right thing. I think it's going to go absolutely the wrong way when you go this route. So that's my experience, Mr. Chair. And if I could ever help some of these, I've got a number of them in my district, and I can count on one hand how many of them are properly run and run well. Most of them are consistently in a deteriorating situation, and I think this is just going to exacerbate that problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt, then Draheim, then Port.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, and you know, I thought the discussion between you and Senator Johnson was interesting in the analogy that there's something that we want to do, say paid family leave. We believe that Minnesotans should have access to paid family leave. We just disagree on the how. I co-authored a bill on that would have been, I think, a better solution that got bipartisan votes in the Minnesota Senate and was held up by the DFL-led House. And I think we're saying the same thing here, Mr. Chair, that there is a better way to do this and to achieve this outcome without the heavy-handedness. Instead of treating every employer, instead of treating every owner as if they are bad owners, we should be looking at it differently and trying to get the bad owners to act like the good owners. Instead, we are going the other direction. You know, Senator Port, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. You had mentioned that, you know, the rates could go up if property taxes increased or something like that, but your 821 amendment struck offset documented increase in operational capital costs or special levied or pending taxes of the manufactured home park. So the only thing left that they can increase on is necessarily for the health and safety of the residents. So if there's a large county tax increase, what we're saying is that the owners now have to eat that, and we can't. So if we were to, again, pass down, let's say, Medicaid costs to the counties to balance the state budget, then the counties would have to increase property taxes in order to cover those costs and mandates. But the manufactured home park owners wouldn't be able to recover that cost based on H21. Am I correct in that?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator Pratt, I apologize for the confusion earlier. There was, when this bill came to us from Judiciary, there was an error in the engrossment that came to us that we're fixing here. And so it does have to relate to the health and safety of the park. That has been used very broadly. You can ask any city who's used health and safety for reasons to do many things. But the requirement is that the rent increase must have value to the residents and the park.
Senator Pratt, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, no, I just wanted to say, I think this goes to the very point that, you know, I appreciate the work that Senator Bolden's put into this bill. I've worked on bills for multiple years as well. And you want to see them come to fruition at some point in time. But if we're not going to allow the owners to recoup the cost increases, particularly those, as Senator Johnson said, that are being forced down by us here at the state or by our actions that force the county to increase the cost, then I'm concerned that we're going to see fewer and fewer of these properties available for lease or ownership, that we're going to actually deplete the supply of manufactured housing lots over time because they can't keep up with the rising cost of property taxes or any other taxes that we choose to levy upon them. And so, Mr. Chair, I become even more concerned with the A21 amendment as it was adopted. Thank you.
Senator Draheim. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. The provision does not cap rent. It requires that they justify that any increase is necessary for the health and safety of the park. So if that tax increase means they wouldn't be able to do necessary upgrades or continue to provide services to the park, that would be a reason to be able to update it. It is not allowed to be increased only to pad their profits. I want to go back to what Senator Johnson was saying. There are pressures on Minnesotan families, significant pressures. Inflation is high. Our energy costs have gone up, particularly here in Minnesota, where hundreds of millions of dollars have been either threatened or canceled from the federal government. In H.R. 1, Medicaid and SNAP benefits are being cut, benefits to people that these folks rely on. Now the price of gas has gone through the roof because we're in an unnecessary war. The cost of building more housing has gone up because tariffs have made wood and supplies more expensive. And those cuts to Minnesota families, the reason they were cut and where the money went to was tax cuts for billionaires. That is what H.R. 1 does. And now we're in a war on top of that that's $2 billion a day of taxpayer money. So yes, I think there are pressures on families in Minnesota that do not bring them benefits, but instead make life harder. Paid family leave is one of the things that allows people to keep their jobs when they need to care for a sick family member or when they need to take care of a newborn baby. I think it's government's job to provide services that people need. That's our job. And what we are seeing in manufactured home parks is people who have invested oftentimes their life savings in order to be able to own a home. And as Senator Howe said, these homes are not mobile anymore. It's not something you can just hitch to a truck and drive away. They are planted where they live. And that is these people's homes. And they are now stuck there being taken advantage of by people who want to make a profit. You can see it all across Minnesota. I agree we should invest in the infrastructure, and we should invest in making sure that people's homes are safe and stable. And I would welcome Senator Howe to work on that with us, because I agree the work is not done in this bill. But this is a critical first step to show our neighbors that we hear them. We hear the fight that they have brought to us year after year after year. These are the pieces that will help them. And to the opportunity to purchase piece, I just want to say, this does not require that a park take that offer. It requires that they notify the residents so that they can, if they choose, take advantage of programs that we have to provide that down payment assistance to buy a park, as we have done in several parks across Minnesota in the last year. It is an opportunity to purchase. It is not a requirement that an owner turn down a more lucrative offer from private equity or anyone. It gives the residents a chance to be able to own their own communities. And, you know, Senator Howe, I agree with you. A lot of these parks are really, they're difficult to visit, to watch the crumbling infrastructure, to see the shape that some of these homes are in. But what I will tell you is I have also been to some parks that are incredible neighborhoods, where people are invested in community centers that they have built, where they have built playgrounds for children, where they work together and care for each other. And those are the parks that are owned by the residents. I would be happy to take this committee on a tour of one. There's a great one in Fridley that's just phenomenal. But this is investing in their community versus extracting from that community for profit is really the difference of what we're looking at in this bill. And so I encourage a no vote on the amendment.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out with the opportunity to purchase, when you're structuring a deal of this size, any movement in interest rate could kill the deal. And I just had a deal that went up 0.25%. And it added a lot to the cost, almost broke the deal, because they could not lock in an interest rate. And when you lock in an interest rate, time matters. This opportunity to purchase delays the ability for a future owner to come in and purchase that at the most affordable rate. And if we do this opportunity to purchase, it could delay locking in of that financing, and more times than not, you lock in because you think you're going to be at the lowest rate, and guess what? The rate goes up. And that gets passed on rent. So it is a double-edged sword, and I just wanted to point that out to the members that aren't in business and haven't had to deal how to structure a commercial transaction. So there's more to it than just reading it off of a bill. It does affect how you structure the deal, and the time does matter. And I think it would affect 1031 exchanges, et cetera. But I know that this committee probably doesn't want to get a lesson on 1031 exchanges, other than probably John, who's probably an expert. But I just wanted to point that out to the members.
Thank you. We have the Draheim A22 amendment before us. We'll have a roll call. Staff will take the roll.
Senator Marty?
No?
Senator Friends?
No.
Senator Pratt? Senator Champion?
No.
Senator Draheim?
Yes.
Senator Howe.
Aye.
Senator Jazinski.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Yes.
Senator Mohammed.
No.
Senator Murphy.
Nope.
Senator Pappas.
No.
Senator Wickland.
There being 5 ayes and 7 nays, the motion does not prevail. Further discussion on the bill. Senator Jazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to offer the A23 amendment.
Senator Jazinski offers the A23 amendments, and it will now be distributed. And while it's being distributed, perhaps you want to start explaining the amendment.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Port, for bringing this bill forward. I haven't had the opportunity to work on the Housing Committee, but just so you know, I've been involved in real estate for about 33 years, from real estate appraisal, commercial, residential, property management, development, pretty much anything in real estate has been involved with it. So I've had a lot of knowledge with this, and the biggest thing that I hear and that I see is how important it is for home ownership. That's what builds equity in families. That builds people's net worth. I also have heard over the years that there's a lot of interest that's being that MHFA is sitting on that's not going to programs. So what this bill would do would take $80 million from the interest earned by MHFA and put $48 million to the Workforce Home Ownership Program. The purpose of the program is to increase the supply of workforce in affordable owner-occupied multifamily or single-family housing throughout Minnesota. It would also take $16 million from the Greater Minnesota Housing Infrastructure Grant Program under MSA 462A-395. Through this program, MHFA makes grants to counties and cities to provide up to 50% of the capital cost of public infrastructure necessary for an eligible workforce housing development project. It also gives $8 million to manufactured home park redevelopment program under the same statutes. This program also improves the infrastructure at manufactured home parks. It also would take $8 million for a grant to Co-North for a loan fund to provide financial assistance for the conversion of manufactured home parks and cooperative ownership. Again, the frustration I hear is getting people into single family ownership. Again, I've owned apartments at one time for 19 years. I had 40 units of apartments, so I understand the apartment side. I understand I've done subdivisions, single-family homes. I've listed property. I actually have had a property listed last year, but when the developer looked at it and to put curb, gutter, water, sewer, streets in there, it basically prohibited him from even selling them because he could never break even on them. So what this would do, a small city like Medford could apply for this, get a grant to buy that down so that actually there was lots available so people could build single-family workforce homes. And I'm just going to use one example. I thought of it this morning. I sold a house in 2010 for $112,500. Now, it was a workforce-type home. That individual bought that. He put 20% down. He held it for 15 years, made some improvements, paid down the loan. He sold that in 2025. I brokered it. $264,000 he sold it. So he made $151,500 in 10 years. That's $10,000 a year. He also paid down his $112,500 that he borrowed. So he walked out of there with $264,000 of equity that he put into another home and just kept building those. So we obviously know that it helps people to do that. So what this would do is take that interest money that MHFA has, put it to work, and get some single-family homes built, allow some redevelopments of manufactured home parks, and with that, I'd ask for your support.
Senator Port on the A23.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I strongly ask for no on this amendment. I think what this amendment shows is very worthy programs. These are all programs that I created in 2023 with our $1 billion investment. I love these programs. They're great programs. However, the interest that MHFA has earned on that $1 billion investment, which is a huge outlier, the same as roughly 40 years of what we have invested into housing. I haven't gotten offers for another $1 billion investment since then. So I'm not expecting it to happen again anytime soon. We had an opportunity, we made a big investment, and in housing, those investments take time. Some of the programs that, like you raised here, they have already expended all the money that we gave them. Other programs, like the capital investment programs, take years to build the large projects that they build across the state. And so that money stays and is continued to be invested. We do not pay operations for MHFA. Like every other agency, we have an operations budget. We do not have an operations budget at the legislature for MHFA. They pay for their operations through the interest that is earned on the programs that we give them. The programs that we passed in 2023, most of them have a life of 5 to 7 years, plus there's a 2-year oversight now required after programs are done. So this is a huge increase in staffing, doubling the size of MHFA over the last few years. If we were to spend $80 million out of the $81 million that they have in that interest account, we would need to turn around and start funding $20 million every year just for operations. That would very quickly get us back into this place. Because they have this interest, they're able to continue investing it and continue pushing out the life of the agency. Do I wish that the agency was faster at reinvesting money back into programs? Absolutely. Sometimes it makes me very angry that some of that money has not already been reinvested. That's why Senator Draheim and I moved that amendment earlier, so the legislature has a stronger line of sight into what is needed and where that money is invested, so that we can push that money back into programs faster. I do think we should talk about things like a timeline, how long they have before they need to reinvest money. Those are things we started the discussion on in our committee this year, but realized as we dug into this issue that it is much more complex than it seems at the, just looking at a fund with $80 million in it. But that is 4 years of agency operations that the legislature doesn't have to pay. That is money that doesn't have to be taken out of appropriations that we make to the agency in admin costs. They don't have to take that because they have that $80 million. So it means more of our money goes directly to programs. I think these are all very valuable programs. I wish we were in a financial position this year to invest more money into housing. But that is agency operation funds. And it will be necessary over the course of the next several years, unless we want to, like, if you look at the spreadsheet that we have, there is no line on here for operations. We would need to add $20 million a year, $40 million a biennium, to the housing budget, which is currently $1.1 billion. We would need to add $40 million to that every biennium if we take this money and spend it right now. So I ask for a no vote.
Further discussion on the Jasinski A23. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Jasinski, for bringing the amendment forward. I do believe that this would make an impact to lower the cost of housing, and that should be the goal. And to me, it's always that pathway to home ownership is how you build equity, and that's what we should strive to do. And I really do think this amendment gets at the heart of that with some very good programs. And we can always adjust the numbers. But I will push back a little bit, Chair, on just this one fund to operate. They have the resources from the mortgages they do every year, and they sell those bonds, and they can keep some of the interest from that to operate also. And I think when I looked up what we spend on rent for them in the TRIA building, I think it was like $1.6 million, something like that a year. we're spending on rent, you know, which I personally think is a little lavish, for a state agency when we have empty space and other state buildings. But that's something you guys can address next year. But this is what we're supposed to be working on, is actual programs to help people. And I think this amendment gets to it, you know, and we could cut it in half if that works for the majority. You know, I think we could move the numbers around. So if the 80 million isn't the right number, maybe 20 million is the right number, and we can shrink it down and prorate it. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Jasinski 823 amendment. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we did the infusion in 2023, the $1 billion that Senator Port mentioned, the agency has made over $137 million in interest. That was just through the first 2 years of this year. And when we look at the Jasinski amendment, there's $8 million to turn some of these manufactured home parks into cooperatives, exactly what we talked about in the last amendment. And yet, for some reason, we're fighting that. We as a legislature should have access to these funds. We as a legislature should be able to direct where these funds go. And I appreciate that, you know, there's a need for the agency to operate. And as Senator Draheim said, we can make some changes, but the one thing we know is home ownership is the greatest opportunity to build generational wealth. That's what we should be focusing on. This idea of being in a cooperative, that's what we should be focusing on. You know, housing in Minnesota was expensive before H.R. 1. Housing in Minnesota was expensive before the tariffs. We have, you know, when I talk to builders, the three biggest costs are, they just tell me they're the 3 L's: land, labor, and lumber. And we have been pricing out land. Met Council strategies on maintaining the MUSA line have increased the cost of land inside the MUSA line so much higher, 10 times higher than what it costs outside the MUSA line. I've been trying to get an analysis for years from the Metropolitan Council telling me why housing is so much more expensive in Minnesota than it is in other similar metropolitan areas. So I absolutely think if we're going to spend this money, if we've allocated and the agency has invested this money, let's put it to work. Let's put it to work on building generational wealth. Let's put it to work on actually helping those folks in manufactured home parks. We've come up with several ideas here, and all we hear is no. Because we've decided that the heavy-handed approach is the best approach. And as I said before, Mr. Chair, I think what we're going to end up doing is increasing the cost of housing in this state even higher, despite our best intentions, and we're going to actually have a detrimental impact on the supply. So I think this is a good approach. We should use that money that Minnesota Housing has received based on our allocation, our appropriation from 3 years ago. And let's put it to work for the people of Minnesota, and let's save us some actual interest cost on some of this, on some of these programs. There's no reason we should be paying 50% more on bonds than the actual principal of the bonds to begin with when we have the money sitting in cash. Thank you.
Further discussion? If not, on the A23 Jasinski amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion does not prevail. Further discussion on the bill? If not, Senator Friends, moves that Senate File 203 as amended be recommended to pass and staff be instructed to make technical and conforming changes. Is there further discussion on that motion? Mr. Report, any last comments?
I appreciate the committee's time and desire to help folks live in stable homes.
There being no further discussion on Senator Friends' motion that Senate File 203 as amended be recommended pass, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Port, Senator
Thank you, Mr.
Bolden,
Chair.
and staff and everyone. Next, we've got Senator Hoffman's bill, which we postponed earlier, and Senator Hoffman, welcome to the Senate Finance Committee.
You know, Mr. Chair and members, I would have been here on time. I got stuck behind a slow driver in the passing lane on 694 from another state, and all I kept thinking was, man, Jasinski, what the heck are we doing? I'm kidding. Thank you. Members and staff, there's an A2 amendment, if you could move that. Somebody move that.
Okay,
That'd be great.
Senator Murphy offers the A2 amendment, which is in our packets. Is there any discussion? This is just the appropriation language for it. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Hoffman, you want to go through the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and to let you also know, the Colonel Bogovich is here from the State Patrol. If you have any questions for her or staff, they are here. I present to you Senate File 4167. That creates that Protective Services Unit within the Capitol Security Division of the State Patrol. The new protective unit would be charged with providing security and protection services for the constitutional officers, Minnesota Supreme Court justices, and state legislators. This new unit would also conduct the ongoing threat assessments to life and safety for state officials and coordinate with the legislative sergeant-at-arms and local law enforcement if local protective services are needed. Mr. Chair, we have seen an exponential increase in threats of violence and harm to elected officials. Even to I'm speaking, I have continually get voicemails and emails in that nature, Mr. Chair. We've seen too typically what happens when threats are acted upon. Political violence is unacceptable and it must be rejected. But we must also adjust to this new reality, Mr. Chair. This bill is a necessary response and would keep elected officials and Supreme Court justices safe and dedicate the resources necessary to hopefully stop future tragedies from happening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Is there, well, Ms. Boyd, you want to go through the fiscal note?
Mr. Chairman, before she does.
Yes.
That's the other body.
Mr. Nauman,
She's
want
looking
to
for the
begin
switch.
first for the council?
So, Mr. Chair and members, I think it's worth noting that in most occasions, the Senate Finance Committee has a spreadsheet to accompany a bill. In this particular case, since this bill, I believe your preference will be to have it incorporated into a safety and security bill later, and the committee will receive a full spreadsheet at that time. So in this circumstance, I think the preferred approach would be for the fiscal analyst, in this case, Ms. Rowan Boyd, to walk through the fiscal note and just talk about the cost. The Murphy Amendment put the proper appropriation for the Department of Public Safety into the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Nauman. Ms. Boyd, could you go through the fiscal note and any comments you have?
Mr. Chair and members, thank you. Yeah, I'll be walking through the Senate File 4167 fiscal note that you have in front of you, hopefully. The agency it was assigned to was the Department of Public Safety. You can see on the first page of the fiscal note there are costs every year starting in fiscal year 2027 from the general fund related to the establishment of the Protective Services Unit, and there are an estimated 32 new FTEs related to the language. I just want to point out real quickly that on page 6 and 7 of the fiscal note is a breakdown of costs, most of it related to staffing at DPS, and this is all from the general fund, but I'm going to walk through some of the assumptions that build those numbers in the fiscal note, starting on page 3. The fiscal note assumes that there will be a need for 8 new FTEs to cover 3 new security locations required by the bill language that don't fall within the statutory limits of the capital area complex. These would be the Attorney General's office, the Secretary of State's office, and the State Auditor's office. And then I'll go back to something on that page, but just continuing on page 4. There's a requirement in the bill to respond to credible threats that could require some personal protective security for a principal state official. That assumes, the department assumes 270 credible threats per year, and the staffing for those would total $5.63 million a year approximately. That could also be, that could be for state patrol, capital security, or that could be to reimburse local law enforcement to staff those, that personal security. Also on page 4, talks about the establishment of the Protective Services Unit, requiring 8 sworn trooper FTEs. That's analogous to the current Executive Protection Unit that also has 8 FTEs. That would also require some specialty vehicles and equipment for those troopers. Let's see. The bottom of page 4 talks about additional specialty training for up to 30 troopers from various patrol districts around the state, since personal protective services may be required in locations throughout the state. And that is ongoing costs for training. On page 5 of the fiscal note, there are assumptions related to new FTEs for complementary support and supervisory staff. And those are listed in the bullets at the top of page 5. You'll see there are 3 additional dispatchers and 1 dispatch supervisor, 2 additional administrative support staff, 2 additional non-sworn criminal analysts, and 1 additional sworn threat investigator, and 2 supervisors to ensure oversight and accountability. To accommodate the increased staff, the fiscal note assumes a need for more office and dispatch space within the Capitol complex. There's also a need to meet the needs of the new sworn troopers. In the bill language, there would be a need to recruit, equip, and train an additional 11 sworn troopers, so there would be training costs related to that. The bill also contains costs at the BCA and not just State Patrol Capital Security, since the note assumes the Protective Services Unit will coordinate with BCA's Behavioral Threat Assessment Management section. And this assumes the need for 2 criminal intelligence analyst FTEs and 3 special agent FTEs. I just want to go back real quickly to the bottom of page 3. I'm just going to note that I noted that there would be security needs at 3 additional locations, the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and State Auditor, where they are not located now. And that would require, this assumes an additional $2.16 million in additional infrastructure costs. That is not included in the totals on the front of the fiscal note. These assume they would be paid by the state office at which the location will be, and not paid by the State Patrol. So that's a one-time cost of $2.1 million that is not wrapped up in the totals on the front of the fiscal note. And then if we go back to page 6, I'm not going to walk through every line because I've talked about all these FTEs in the note unless there are questions. But on the table, the first 7 rows have to do with the staffing as outlined within State Patrol. The last line on that page, the costs of the personal protective security training statewide. And that would be $380,000 the first year and $60,000 a year thereafter. On page 7, the first line is the estimates for additional leased space for additional staffers, and that is approximately $91,000 per year. And then the next line is about the recruitment, equipment, and training of additional state troopers, 11 new sworn state troopers. That is $1.7 million the first year and $968,000 the second year. The staff costs. There's a total for MSP on that line. Subtracting the training and lease space cost, the just staff only cost would be about 4.6 million in the first year, the second year, and then the third year would be 4.3 million. You'll see under MSP total, there's a line for reimbursement fund appropriation. That were the estimates for the staffing of personal protective services in response to a credible threat. That may also reimburse local law enforcement. That's estimated at about 5.4 million a year. And then there are two lines showing the FTE needs at the BCA, and that totals about 1 million a year. So you'll see on the last line, Mr. Chair and members, the totals would be about 13.1 million from the general fund in fiscal year 27, 12 million in fiscal year 28, and about 10.9 million in fiscal year 29.
Thank you, Ms. Rowan Boyd. I have a question about the personal protective security training. Is that 30 troopers and 8 protective unit troopers? Or is that these 30 are going to be trained in order to provide for the 8 positions they would be using for personal security?
Mr. Chair, are you talking about the last line on page 6 of the table?
On page 6, yeah.
Okay. I think this is grouping together the specialty security training that would be required for the 8 troopers in the new protective services unit, 6 annually after the first year. And then as I noted, the 30 troopers statewide that may need to attend to other security events throughout the state.
So basically the 30 is 1 year and then 8 for the other. Oh, yeah, I can see that number. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Hoffman. It's an interesting bill. I've got some concerns, though, because right now, so from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to look at hiring somewhere around 30, 38 new state troopers. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members, there'll be a combination. This is just the assumptions that it would take that many personnel in order to, on that one, Senator Howe.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Hoffman. Here's my concern. Right now, the State Patrol, I believe, is short 40 personnel already. And that's with the 30-some folks we just put in uniform.
Yeah.
And when they're number 34 out of 35 in their compensation, where are we going to get these folks? And the additional concern is now we're going to, I believe, and my concern is we've already sucked people from outstate down here to do this capital security that we're currently doing, which leaves outstate greater Minnesota short troopers, which raises our risk in greater Minnesota and brings those troopers down here. So my concern is until we're able to hire now 70-some troopers, greater Minnesota is going to lose more troopers. And until we raise the compensation for troopers, it's going to be more and more difficult to recruit those and retain those folks from going to other agencies. And this isn't as simple as just passing this bill. We got other bills that need to be addressed in order to make this one work.
Spot on.
So that's my concern. I'm not opposed to the bill. I'm just drawing it out to the big picture of what we're facing to get this done. And so as we look at the dollars here, we also have to look at the other dollars in order to make this one successful. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman.
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, he's spot on, Senator Marty. Senator Howe has been part of the conversation about pension. He's been part of the conversation. Actually, he's driven that conversation for many, many years. And Senator Jeff Howe is spot on the fact that our troopers are now 34th. They rank 34th out of 35th. You could actually leave and go work at a municipality and make $30,000 a year more. And so there's a bigger conversation, Senator Marty, that needs to happen in the state of Minnesota. Our number one shining light in law enforcement are the Minnesota State Patrol, and we are not doing anything to compensate them enough. Senator Howe and Senator Frentz was part of that conversation. There really needs to be, if you want to say you really care about people, then show it. Senator Howe has showed us every year. He's not been inconsistent on that at all, and he's spot on this. But I thank you, Jeff, for your support on this. But he raises some really important points. You have folks in outer state. Can I say outstate? No, you can't say outstate. It's all in Minnesota. People out there in like Mankato, for example, right? Oh, by the way, Mankato, there you go. State Patrol owns the building, but the Department of Admin's going to charge them lease space, right? It's like, wait a minute, something's not amiss here, Mr. Chair. But I wish we could have a bigger package. I wish all the stuff that Senator Howe has been working on for many, many years absolutely is included in this conversation, because he's spot on.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Support the bill. Just logistically a question. So if we're hiring new troopers, are those new troopers going specific to this, or are we moving troopers around? So if there's an existing trooper that's stationed in Faribault or Mankato, are they having the option to come and take this duty versus new officers coming in fresh? Just kind of a logistical, tell me how you foresee that happening, and maybe Colonel Bogoyevich would comment on that, but I'm just curious, you're hiring 38 new people, but are those new people coming just to this, or are they going to coming into a trooper and then maybe the troopers redisperse on who has what duty and what gig they get to do? So that'd be my question.
She's on her way. I tried to get a job with the State Patrol, but I'm 60 years old now, so so thank you, Mr. Chair.
Colonel, go ahead and introduce yourself, and please speak to some of the things you're hearing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Christina Bogoyevich. I have the honor of serving as the Colonel of the Minnesota State Patrol. Senator, to your question, first off, this is 11 new positions as written in here, 11 trooper positions. The rest are non-sworn staff. Contractually, yes, the current troopers in the state of Minnesota would be offered to fill these positions first. However, we would not do that until we could ensure that backfills in greater Minnesota are made also.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you. That just again follows up with Senator Howe's concern about greater Minnesota or farther distances from this area to take that away. I know we're struggling. We've talked about the academies and getting more people and the pay issues and all those things. But again, if I would think that'd be considered pretty good duty to be here versus greater Minnesota. So trying to get people to make sure that we can maintain what's going on in greater Minnesota, because those in those rural areas, state troopers are so important to help our counties and supplement and provide, not just supplement, provide all those services across the state. So thanks, Senator Hoffman, for the bill, and just wanted to hear those, how that would be addressed. So thank you.
Further questions or comments? Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's good to see you, Colonel. I just want to thank Senator Hoffman for bringing this bill forward. It is an important consideration for this legislature now and going forward. I appreciate it very much.
And I think we all recognize this is not something we wanted to do, but we don't have a choice. And I think it's critically important. And if there being no further comment, any final comments, Senator Hoffman? If not, this bill will be laid over for inclusion in the safety and security package, which is tomorrow. Thank you, Colonel, and thank you, Senator Hoffman and Ms. Rowenberg. We now have Senate file, let's see, Senate file 4214 in front of us. And what I'm going to suggest is that we have Senator Herr go through the bill and staff go through spreadsheet, and then we'll quickly have, if we don't have time to finish before then, we will hear from commissioners. At least, yes, I see commissioners are both here. And with that, Senator Herr, welcome to the Senate Finance Committee, Senate File 4214.
Thank you, Chair Marty and members. Senate 4214 is our environmental supplement budget bill, a mini omnibus bill. There are 4 categories in this small bill. The first category, extension of deadline, was specified under Article 1, Section 1, 2, and 3. Projects such as tree planting, DNR electronic license system passed in 2024 to modernize our registration, and park and trail projects such as 4 Misabi Trail, Oxbow Park, Zoman Zoo, Kramer Lake, and Wildwood County Park, Plumtree Creek Park, and Robinson Quarry Park. The second category is an emergency assistant for Minnesota Zoo of $3.8 million to address the zoo operating shortfall, which under Section 4. Third category is a $75,000 appropriation for infectious waste study to complete in 2027. And fourth category is the bulk part of this bill, which is the battery recycling or battery stewardship in Article 2. There are 16 sections under this article that details the plan, budget, authorities, definition, and other essential. I'd like to have Mr. Miro run through the number for you and then call on testify from agency who can speak about the section that they represent. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, you want to go through the numbers?
Mr. Chairman and members, I'll quickly go through the language in the bill for now, and then I'll point out the appropriations that are also on the spreadsheet. Article 1 of Senate File 4214, Section 1 contains a change, and that's on page 5 of the original bill. And on page 5 of the original bill is a change from a previous Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund appropriation. This was is for a Suni Lee Memorial, and this was previously going to a different entity, and it changes it to the City of St. Paul, and also extends that appropriation until 2028. Section 2 of the bill starts on page 10, and this deals with the Department of Natural Resources ELS system. Section 2 just changes a lot of the effective dates from 2024 laws that established a new ELS system. This is also tied to appropriation extension that's in Section 3, and I'll point that out. And the changes in Section 2 allows the DNR to sort of phase in the new ELS system, and it makes these changes effective as the department phases in the ELS system. Section 3 contains a number of appropriation extensions that came from various original sources. All of these extensions are appropriations or grants that would have expired on June 30th, 2026, and this gives all these appropriations just one more year to June 30th, 2027. Subdivision 1 are all extensions from Parks and Trail Funds appropriations. And I won't go through those individually, so there are 5 of those. Subdivision 2, paragraph A is the extension for the ELS system that I previously mentioned that's tied to Section 2. And these are extensions that come from original appropriation out of the Game and Fish Fund and the Natural Resources Fund. Paragraph B on line 21 is an extension for appropriation for wild elk, expanding the Minnesota's wild elk population. This was originally a $2.3 million general fund appropriation, and there's about $143,000 left in this one. This was from a Senator Hochschild, Senate File 4340. Subdivision 3 are requests that came in the governor's budget. There's 2 extensions to Met Council appropriations dealing with tree planting. And then moving on to Section 4 is the one general fund appropriation that's in the bill. This is $3.8 million to the Minnesota Zoo one time. This was in the governor's budget. The current appropriation fiscal year '26 to the zoo is $13.925 million, so this would add to that, just for fiscal year '26. Section 5 is the other appropriation that's in this bill. This is a $75,000 appropriation from the Environmental Fund to the PCA to do a study of unlawful shipment of infectious or pathological waste. There was a bill that was in the committee, Senate File 4187 from Senator Pappas, that had a broader program that dealt with this. And this here is a study to, you can see on line 12.9, to study the assessment of the extent of the problem and then make recommendations for legislative policy changes and possibly fines. Article 2, as Senator Herr mentioned, is the Battery Stewardship Program. This is from Senate File 1690, Senator Kupek. This program here is, it's self-funded. The PCA costs are assessed to the, back to the program. So only the PCA's costs are carried here. It's $245,000 in fiscal year '27, $501,000 in fiscal year '28, and then $589,000 in fiscal year '29. Those are non-general fund costs that are all carried in the special revenue fund. And Mr. Chair, that's it for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Are there questions from the committee on the financial things here? If not, should we start by having the...
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howell first.
Thank you, Senator Marty and Mr. Chair. Senator Herr, and you may not have this answer, but what I'm looking for is in the governor's budget, their proposal, there was money in there to reimburse the DNR for their activities in the safety and patrolling for different events that has happened throughout the years. How is the DNR supposed to pay those folks or recoup those funds that they expended on having the conservation officers down here doing law enforcement pieces? Is there any, we're not addressing that shortfall at all, and where is the DNR going to be taking money out of which fund in order to make that up?
Good question, Senator Howell. I think the DNR could respond to that. I think they have, they may be previous budget that they can work around. It has been tough for our committee to decide which one will be appropriate, and so we did left that the conservation officer request or recommend by the governor out of this bill. But yes, there could be a shortfall. Perhaps the DNR can comment on that aspect, but it's not in this bill.
Senator Howell, and we are going to hear from the Commissioner Strumman in just a minute, so.
I'll hold further questions in, Senator Marty. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure, perhaps we can have, well, both commissioners are here. We'll start with Commissioner Strumman because her department's been brought up in the questions from Senator Howell. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Marty, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Stroman. I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I want to appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I want to say thank you to Chair Herr and his committee for putting together an Omnibus Environment Finance Bill. As Chair Herr and Mr. Mueller noted, importantly contained in the bill are a couple of provisions that are key to the successful phased launch of our new electronic license system that includes both the appropriation extension as well as the update of effective dates. And we do intend to begin that phased launch after the height of the Minnesota fishing opener and that heavy license sale period. So we look forward to that. As Senator Howe noted, and Chair Herr, not included in the bill and of concern to us is the $1.5 million in reimbursement to DNR's Enforcement Division. This was a provision contained in the governor's budget, and it is reimbursement for costs that have already been incurred in fiscal year 26 related to our conservation officers' response to a number of mutual aid requests. Those requests include responding at the request of Minneapolis Police Department following the Annunciation shootings. It includes supporting State Patrol during events related to Operation Metro Surge, and most recently supporting State Patrol in Capitol Security during the No Kings rally last month. So these are costs that have already been incurred. And I want to appreciate that the legislature in the past has recognized that Minnesota DNR cannot use dedicated natural resource funds for these general public safety expenditures. And so DNR has been in the past reimbursed through legislative appropriations for these kinds of activities. That is the spirit in which the governor included the provision in his budget. That is the spirit in which I am here today to again ask for that recognition that we cannot use dedicated funds for that, and it is to the detriment of the rest of our natural resources work. And I think that balance between work that happens all across the state of Minnesota if those funds are not reimbursed. Notably, it is likely we will have to cancel the upcoming Conservation Officer Academy without that reimbursement. It is also anticipated that we will have less ability to respond to activities like public waters violations, wetlands violations, timber theft, fire investigations, and assisting local law enforcement across the state as we do, because conservation officers are often the closest law enforcement officer when there is some kind of medical emergency, accident, or other incident. I will just note as well, we do not yet know the full effects of not receiving the $1.5 million reimbursement because contract negotiations with MLEA and units 18 and 19 are still ongoing. So depending on how those bargaining agreements turn out, the fiscal situation could be worse than we're anticipating. So, Mr. Chair, appreciate the work that Chair Herr and his committee have done, and appreciate your consideration of the bill and, in particular, the addition of the DNR's enforcement budget item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And by the way, this bill is being laid over and included in the Omnibus bill, but I wanted to ask a question right now about, in terms of this $1.5 million deficiency, we've been discussing the idea of giving DNR flexibility with the carry forward funding, because I think in Enforcement Division you have about 1.3 million or something carry over, but if you were allowed to carry over from other parts of the agency, not to carry over, transfer the carryover funding for the purpose of meeting this deficiency. We don't have to resolve that today because we're not going to be putting the bill, we're not going to be sending the bill out of committee today, but I just wondered if you have reaction to that, and if so, we'd love to discuss that in the next few days.
Senator Marty, I appreciate the question. I think certainly we can discuss the specifics of what you're looking at. Our Chief Financial Officer, Mary Robison, is here, and she can certainly look more closely at our funds. I think generally I would say the money that is appropriated to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources each biennium is not appropriated to the department as a whole. It is appropriated to specific divisions for specific work. And Minnesotans expect then the department to carry out that work for which funding is appropriated. And that includes the full scope of our natural resources work. So if the solution is to pull funds from other important work, as I said, such as addressing wetland violations or other wetlands work, addressing public waters work, or other really important environmental protection, I think that is not what Minnesotans expect. And so even apart from any flexibility we may have, again, I think Minnesotans expect our budget to be whole in the purposes for which we're there and to be able to respond to those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, and just to be clear, but we will touch base with Senator Herr and you about it as well, and that is that wouldn't be talking about operating funds, we'd be talking about the carryover from last year, which, as you point out, you can only spend it in each division, but if we, that was carryover from what was appropriate last time, and so let's discuss that further in the next couple of days with your staff and so on. Senator Howe, did you have more on that issue?
No, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it, and thank you for the answer. I guess I think that's what we have to keep our eyes focused on, is exactly what is not going to happen because that funding is not going to be provided. So thank you, Commissioner.
Senator Herr.
Yeah, Chair Marty and Senator Howe and also Commissioner Stroman, I will open my door and continue to work with you, Chair Marty, and also Stroman to find a solution for that debt.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And looking at the time and so on, I think we are likely to, we're trying to get this done, and I'm told there are not amendments or none that I'm aware of. I have one that we could do to address that, but I want to talk with you about that first. And we have several days for that. But I wonder if we could have Commissioner Kessler come up now so we can at least get the testimony. Thank you, Commissioner Stroman. Welcome to the committee, and please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Marty and members. Again, I'm Katrina Kessler, Commissioner of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Good to be here. Thank you to Chair Herr and members of the Senate Environment Committee. I really appreciate all of their thoughtful work and appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. Particularly want to express gratitude for the inclusion of the battery extended producer responsibility components. That is a challenge that is facing the solid waste system across the state, the haulers, the collectors. There are fires that are occurring too often and represent a safety risk to the employees and to the infrastructure. So very much looking forward to continuing to work on that. I also want to thank the committee for beginning the conversation on how to properly recognize and manage infectious waste. I understand that there will be more opportunities to talk about this, and the agency really takes this seriously, and we have heard from partners across the state that this is something that they're looking for state leadership on as well. I understand the fiscal constraints that we're all in at this moment, and just want to call out if there are opportunities to continue to talk about some of the things that are in the governor's bill that are not currently in the bill, we would, or governor's proposal that are not currently in the bill, we would very much welcome that, including a cost savings package related to emergency response and how we reimburse for emergency response, and an ongoing $50,000 appropriation for maintenance related to air monitoring supplies that have already been purchased. So just to be brief, thank you all. Thanks to Chair Herr and to this committee for having us and for the work ahead.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kessler. We have about 7 or 8 minutes, and we're going to lay this over, bring up the other bill, put this on, and so on, and then I think Senator Pappas had at least an amendment she wanted to do, and I think we have a A34 amendment to include to put this language in the supplemental bill. first let's see what Senator Draheim has, and then we can talk about whether we want to do this now or later.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm eager to get to the floor as everybody. My Commissioner, my question, if I could, is the covered battery definition. What is the vision for what type of battery would be defined in your proposal here?
Yeah, Chair Marty and Senator Draheim, our Assistant Commissioner Kirk Kadelka, who knows the answer to your question, is quickly making his way up here, so just give him a second.
Deputy Commissioner Kadelka, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Kirk Kadelka. I'm Assistant Commissioner with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Thank you, Senator, for the questions. What we're looking at is loose or individual batteries. They would be what we call small or medium format. So the things we're very familiar with, A's, double A's, triple A's, those type, but also larger type batteries that are starting to show up in various products. There are some exceptions here. We're not looking to tweak any of the lead acid batteries, the car batteries, or those for instance, OHVs. They have a separate program. We're gonna keep letting that program handle them, but it's these other batteries, and we're really targeting the rechargeable batteries and lithium batteries, because those are the ones that provide, that have the risk for fire safety.
Follow-up, Chair?
Go ahead, Senator Draheim.
Thank you. So it'd be everything from like a hearing aid battery up to like a DeWalt battery, or a Makita or whatever brand power tool, that you clip into a tool. So no lawnmower lithium batteries or the, golf cart or car lithium batteries.
Commissioner Kadelka.
Chair and committee members, they would have to be easily removable. So if the hearing aid battery, if you couldn't use a regular screwdriver or hex wrench to open that, they wouldn't be included. So one key part is easily removable. The lawnmower battery that you're talking about would be included. Those are rechargeable. They're easily removed, just like the DeWalt drill battery, pop out. And those are what are showing up in our household hazardous waste facilities right now that are expensive for them to cover those costs.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, and I see on page 17 is how they describe easily removable, including a coin, which is true for a lot of small appliance things. Other question we have, let me just ask the committee, because we're supposed to be breaking in 5 minutes. We have to put the A34 amendment, which has all this stuff in, may need, thank you, Commissioner, as well, which would be added to it. Sir. Oh, Deputy Commissioner Kadelka, please come back. I'm sorry. We may have to, committee, we may have to meet briefly this afternoon. I think that would probably make sense, but let's, Commissioner Kadelka. Sorry, friends, you're the one with the question. I'm sorry.
My concern is the manufacturers and the description of what's easy to remove. Can we assume that the manufacturers who we're working with in manufacturing these batteries are in agreement with the definition, with the MPCA about what's easy to remove? We'd hate to pass something that the people who build these think is an unworkable definition. To have your pledge from MPCA that they will concede or support that definition?
Mr. Kadelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the standard we're using is another state standard. So originally we had a much tighter standard. We did listen to various manufacturers and open that up to be similar to another state. We have heard different things from different manufacturers on what they're looking for, so it's hard to speak for all of them. What we're trying to do is making sure that it is something that someone in their household would have the equipment to pull out that battery and not put additional burden on the consumer or the household hazardous waste facility to have to go through, find a special tool, go buy it, come back, take it out to be able to properly manage the material.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. I think I'm asking about the organization that says they represent the manufacturers. Are they in support of the language that MPCA is asking for, or are they opposed to it?
Further discussion? If not, I think it's.
I think that was a question, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Senator Friends. Go ahead, Mr. Cadello.
Mr. Chair and committee members, we are working with PRBA, the battery industry industry. They had some questions on this, and we'll have continuing conversations with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner. I think my vote will depend on whether they are supportive. We want to create a recycling program where all stakeholders agree that it's functional. We want to be very careful not to create a recycling program where the difficulty of the battery makes it more obscure to Minnesotans, whether our goal is to really recycle in a convenient and efficient method or whether it's something else. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you. It being 10:30, and I'm not sure we're within the last 10 minutes or so of this bill. So what I'm going to have us do is recess until the call of the chair, which will be 15 minutes, presumably after session adjourns. And we'll come back to this room unless it's, yeah, I think we only have a few more minutes. We'll come back to
So
this
we
room.
can leave all our stuff
You
here?
can leave your materials in the room and the room will be
All right.
closed. So, with that, this committee is in recess to the call of the chair.